Welcome to the Living a Nordic Life podcast, where we explore a simpler, cosier and more intentional life the Nordic way. I'm Fiona McKenna, your Nordic living guide and founder of Living a Nordic Life, where I share all things Nordic living and show you that a Nordic life is the way to bring intentional calm and healthy habits into your own life, wherever you are in the world. Are you looking for ways to bring simplicity, coziness and calm into your life? Well, let me show you how. Visit the Living a Nordic Life website to explore how I can help you on your journey to simple, healthy and happy calm, the Nordic way. You can subscribe to the podcast right here. And if you want regular inspirational emails sent with love from Norway and straight to your inbox, don't forget to subscribe to the Living a Nordic Life newsletters. And so now let's dive into our episode. Hello and welcome to this episode. What can Nordic habits do for you? If you listen to this podcast regularly, or maybe read my blog, or perhaps a little bit of both, or a part of my Facebook group, you'll know that I'm always talking on and on, endlessly, I hear you say, about Nordic habits and how embracing a few simple habits can make a really big difference to our lives. But I expect you're also asking yourself if those habits can really work for you, where you are. I live in Norway, so maybe I see things differently. And how easy is it for you to do that? How easy is it for you to implement these things in your life when you're not here in the Nordics? You're living somewhere else, anywhere in the world. Well, I've got some really good news for you. You don't have to be here. You can do all these things from anywhere, wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever your situation is. Maybe you like to make some huge sweeping changes in your life. Or maybe you just make lots of little small changes. Or perhaps you are only just starting to think about bringing some new habits and ways of living into your life. Perhaps you've just discovered this way of life and you don't quite know where to start. I've got some ideas for you, don't worry. A little while ago, a really lovely friend of mine asked if Andrea and I make New Year's resolutions. And I had to stop and think about it for a bit before I answered. Because we've never really been big fans of resolutions at the start of the year. They always start well, don't they? But by about the 5th of January, they have kind of petered out, if you're anything like us. They've kind of petered out, and you've almost, by the time you get to February, you've almost forgotten what the resolutions were, unless you've written them down. And I always have great plans, and I try to implement too much at once. Eating the elephant whole, we call that. Need to nibble bits off the elephant. And it's a recipe for failure, isn't it? And failure never feels good. You always feel like, oh God, I could have done so much better. So no, was the answer. We don't make resolutions. But we do focus on habits, embracing good habits and trying to eliminate bad habits. The bad habits that I'm talking about are the things that waste our time, that bring us no joy, and don't move us forward in the direction that we want to go in. We've all got some idea of the direction that we want to be moving in, haven't we? We're not moving without any kind of purpose. It might feel like that sometimes, but we're not. We've all got some idea of where we want to be going. And there are some habits that just don't move us in that direction. For me, it's spending too much time caught up in watching a new series on Netflix. You can ask Andrea about that. Or obsessively tidying something, like obsessively tidying the basement, or deciding that all the kitchen cupboards need to be cleaned out. Usually when they don't need doing. And it all comes down to that horrible thing called procrastination. Good habits can be choosing healthy snacks, making time to learn something useful and new. It doesn't necessarily have to be useful. It can be something that brings you joy. I guess whatever way you look at that, that can be useful as well because it makes you feel happier. Or making a conscious choice to be happy each day. Yes, you can make the choice to be happy. You don't have to kind of ride this river of, whatever is thrown at you and you're just being swept along with the tide. No, you can choose to be happy. Nordic habits are some of the things that have made the biggest changes in my life. They're usually simple, easy to implement habits that make big changes in our lives with a small amount of effort, actually. They're usually very small things that come together to make big changes. So, how can Nordic habits help you in your life, wherever you are in the world, and whatever your background? You don't have to be Nordic or have Nordic heritage. For a start, it can simplify your life. Life doesn't have to be complicated. It really doesn't. Feels like it a lot of the time, doesn't it? But it does not have to be complicated. We can make an active choice to keep it simple. Simple living, simple pleasures, and simple choices. Not everything has to be hard and difficult. We are allowed to make the simple, easy choices if we want to. Why not? Why do you have to choose the hard road? If you've got the hard road that you can take with one result and the easy road and it's the same result, why take the hard option? Take the easy option. If it's going to get you there the same way and nobody's going to get hurt or injured or upset, take the easier option. You're allowed to do that because then maybe you can do two things. You've got the energy to do more, haven't you? And it's very positive too. And this is a valuable lesson that I've learned from the Nordic way of life. We can make those easy choices for a simple life of intention if we want to. We just have to decide to do it. You're allowed. There's nothing stopping you. And ignore what anybody else is saying. If you want to do it, you do it. It helps you appreciate the simple things. I'm always talking about simple pleasures, and I love this. It's a habit that I've embraced wholeheartedly since living in Norway. Simple pleasures and appreciating simple everyday things has been a huge game changer for me. When I was in England, I did this a little bit, but since we've been living here, I've done it so much more. It's appreciating all those little things in the everyday. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It can be having a cup of coffee in the morning in your favourite cup and saucer. Maybe it's an old one. Maybe it was something that your grandma had. They were made to be used, you know. They weren't made to be looked at. And if it's special, take good care of it, but still use it. Bringing out the good silver, the good cutlery, the good crockery, the good glassware. Bring it out and appreciate it. Using a lovely bar of soap. That's what I do. That's one of my simple pleasures. Really lovely, handmade French soap. It's not expensive. It's a little bit more expensive than the kind of generic stuff, but it's much better for our skin. And that's kind of what started me on this. But I have it in a beautiful hand-painted soap dish that I got in a village in the south of France a long time ago. And I love it. Every time I use it, it reminds me of that place. And it feels like I'm treating myself just a little bit with this lovely soap. But it's nothing fancy and it's nothing special. Wear the good clothes, wear the nice shoes. Have a piece of chocolate in the evening if you want to. Simple pleasures, and they help us appreciate life a lot more. It raises our base level of happiness, and it makes us much more grateful for what we have. Because there are those days, aren't there, where you look around and you think, gosh, things are not going as well as they could. Or why is my life not like the life of that person on Instagram, who has probably curated those photos within an inch of their lives before they put them on there? Or why do things not look like the Kardashians or somebody in a magazine who's been airbrushed? We have all these lovely things in our lives that help us feel a lot more grateful, and that's really good for our mental health. Nordic habits also encourage you to eat more healthily. Now, we all know that we should be eating in a healthier way, but it's easy, isn't it, to be tempted by the less than healthy option, especially when you go to the supermarket and the not so healthy options are ones that are ready made so you can eat them straight away. Don't go to the supermarket hungry, by the way, if you've ever done that. Do not. They're usually cheaper. Isn't that terrible? And quite often they're next to the till, aren't they? So they're easy to grab, like the sweets and the chocolates. I don't know if they do that where you live, but in the UK I know they've stopped doing that because there were complaints. But they still do it here. in Norway, everything is near the till, so it's easy to, just grab a quick bar of chocolate, or the kids want something. But we don't need to do that. There's nothing wrong with that once in a while, but we don't want to get caught into a cycle of constantly eating the wrong foods. The Nordic diet focuses on seasonal, natural ingredients put together in simple, traditional ways. So if you go food shopping and you pick something up that you fancy, and it's got a long, long list of ingredients, and they're all numbers, and things are unidentifiable, and huge long names that don't sound like something that you would grow in the garden or in your kitchen garden, then you can be pretty much sure that it's not something you want to be eating. You don't want to be eating all those chemicals. They don't make you feel good. The things that make you feel good are the ingredients that are as natural as possible. So pretty much everything on the fruit and vegetable section. Unprocessed meat. It's okay to have a bit, but make sure that you're buying something that's decent quality, that isn't packed full of junk. Buy the best that you can afford. You don't need to go and spend goodness knows what, and it doesn't need to be the finest of everything. You buy what you can afford, what is within your budget. But try and keep it as natural as possible, and try and do as much cooking as you can and as much preparation as you can. You're putting this stuff into your body. So it's going to make you feel grotty on the inside, but that's going to come through in your mental health as well, because it fogs our brains up, doesn't it? It stops us from concentrating. We maybe don't feel quite so good. So Nordic habits are good for that. It encourages you to eat better and to look at what is available within that season. Is it growing in your area right now? If it's not growing, within a certain distance, and it has to be flown halfway across the world, it's not in season, and it's not going to be at its freshest. Nordic habits get you outside more. And I'm always talking on here and in my blog and on social media about friluftsliv. It's outdoor living. It's the best. You don't need to be Bear Grylls or Lars Monson to get outside, but just a few minutes a day will make an enormous difference to your physical and mental health. And when we think about getting outside and moving our bodies, you don't have to run, you can walk, that's allowed. But when we think about doing that, we think about how it's going to benefit us physically. Is it going to help build muscle? Is it going to be good for our bone strength and our bone health? Maybe we want to lose weight. Maybe we want to breathe some fresh air. But actually, it's very good for our mental health as well. And people here learn this, children learn this very early on. If you feel grumpy and you feel fed up, it's good to get outside and get outside into nature. And I'm not going to pretend that it's not easy here to get out and be around nature, because we are surrounded by an awful lot of wild space. It's very easy within a few minutes, wherever you live, even in cities, to be somewhere where there's a lot of green around you. And maybe you don't live in a place like that. But can you put aside some time in a week, half a day maybe, or a day if you can do that, or longer if you can, maybe in an evening, to get away from civilization as much as possible, to be surrounded by nature, to walk on grass or soil or even gravel, but not tarmac and concrete. And just to be surrounded by green trees, to smell the leaves, smell the grass, and if it's rained, perhaps that lovely smell of the wet ground, and listen to birds and see the sky. It's really good for your mental health. Nordic habits slow you down a little more. Life isn't rushed here in the Nordics. We don't trudge around at some snail's pace, I promise you. If things need to get done, they're done. And life starts early here as well. And there are naturally times when we move fast, but there's also a great appreciation of the slower aspects of life, of making time for hygge, a cosy home, good food, spending time with family and friends, cooking a meal and sitting down as a family together to eat it, not just in front of the TV with a tray. It's deliberate, intentional and thoughtful, which in turn makes it all the more meaningful and appreciated. So, is Nordic living for you? It's not difficult to make some simple changes that can have a really big impact on our lives. And there's no better time to start than now. Why not? Some of these very simple things can be started straight away. And if we do something every day for 30 days, it is proven that that becomes habit. So you can kick some of the bad habits by not doing them for 30 days. Don't do everything at once. Take one thing at a time. And also bring in some healthy habits too that will make you feel better, that will bring some joy to your life, because you are allowed to make those choices yourself. And I will see you in the next podcast. Bye. If you've enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the Living a Nordic Life newsletters so you can get an email when I release a new episode. It's a quick and easy way to keep up with all things Nordic living. Please visit livinganordiclife.com. You can listen to Living a Nordic Life on lots of podcast apps, including Spotify, Apple Podcast, Google Podcasts, and plenty of others. If you've enjoyed the Living a Nordic Life podcast, why not leave me a rating? So that's the end of Living a Nordic Life for today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.